Hello, everybody. Okay, now we're into the part you want to learn about. Sixes, you can begin to see your own six just by recording on Zoom. You can just think of a couple questions you want to ask yourself and then record it and answer. And you'll see every expression that I'm talking about. Now, some face shapes lend themselves to developing some muscles more than others. Strong structure in the jaw is 8. So if someone is like this, yeah, I'm an 8. Yeah, no, they're not, because it's a physical way the energy moves through the body. Now, if someone broke their neck and they were like this with their chin back, yeah, they could still be an 8, but they're not gonna be like this and make a big deal about being an 8. Why? Because the 6 and the self-pres that has a very strong self-pres will always identify with 8. And the 6 with the tritypes I gave you the example with will always identify with 8. So they know they're strong, but what they're doing is reacting to the stress of what causes them concern. And that's a very different thing. And the reason I learned microexpressions is because my son, when he was born in 1976, I had for him a new pediatrician who just finished his residency and was very progressive. As it turns out, he was a 9, and 9s are quite progressive until people don't really appreciate them being progressive. But he gave me a piece of paper, 8.5 by 10, with little faces in a circle with expressions. And he said, you know, Katherine, you seem like a progressive person. You're wanting to do all these things pretty differently and openly. He said, I thought you might like this. This guy, Paul Eckman, said that people have microexpressions, and in particular, the babies can communicate before they can talk. And so he showed me all these faces, which were little baby faces of all these expressions. And when a baby spits out their food, it looks like contempt. One side of the face is kind of up. When something doesn't smell good, we all have disgust. These lines are amplified. It's like our head goes back and our nose goes up. And when we're angry, this comes more like a V, and we can have 2 lines or multiple lines. It's different based on our structure, but the eyes narrow. They go in and focused, not diffuse, but targeted. And so he's showing anger, and the mouth is usually tighter, or it could be gritting of the teeth if it's an 8, where you just, my dad was mad at us as kids. Having said that, there is just the expressions that we show based on this structure. Now, because I tend to kind of do a lot of disgust, or if I can't quite see at a distance, I will squint my eyes. Sometimes people think I'm mad, and all I'm doing is concentrating. And that's very common for people that are 8s, because we have a straight mouth, or it turns down actually at the corners rather than turning up like this, just like this. So what's your natural resting face? And so I've done years of collecting pictures of students and people smiling and not smiling, and what happens to the muscles when we're not smiling or scared or angry, when we're just neutral. And the 2s still seem approachable, and the 6s still seem curious, and the 8s seem kind of scary. And some of the other types that have features like 8s or 8 in the tritype might as well. But Tim Roth is a counter-phobic 6. He was the perfect person to be in this TV series, Lie to Me, that was based on the work of Paul Eckman, who's also a 6. And it's amazing because 6s use every emotion every day, all day. So guess who's the very best at doing all these emotions? People who are 6s. It's not by chance. But the main thing is some expressions just show up more commonly with each Enneagram type. Now, anyone can get angry, but this is what a counter-phobic 6 that has the priest archetype, chiseled features, looks like when they're angry. And this is what this archetype looks like when they're happy. Now, I don't know how to be happy with my mouth closed. Even if I'm by myself, I'll be smiling. But some people, they just pleasantly smile. Now, I think he has the 638 example. He was always good playing a character that people underestimated, and then he was very able to just overpower a situation. But he always played roles that were quite glib. And Paul Eckman would go to people and like get in their face to see what they did, and then he'd know if they were being deceptive or not. And disgust is easy to see. Now, 6s usually don't look normal with disgust. He does not look normal. Instead, what you'll see with 6s is contempt, which is one side of their mouth. But it's just like, it could even be like a half smile. And what's important to understand about contempt is that we all use it, but if we can't say what we mean or mean what we say, most of us will just show it, even if we don't know it intellectually. Now, I can sometimes feel contempt when I talk about a particular experience. And even though I'm talking about it neutrally, I'll go, oh, I guess I feel contempt for myself and the way I handled that. Because it doesn't mean you feel contempt for the other. But most times it's contempt for whatever the other is stimulating in your consciousness. Then sadness is diffuse eyes, like, and looking down as opposed to inward or outward. It's being internalized. And it can be pretty subtle with some types, but it's just usually the marked difference in that 6s are very animated. Even the most introverted 6 has animation, even if they're just tiny little gestures. Because what Paul Eckman found at a time when the presiding belief was we learned our expressions from the mother or the caregiver. And he said, wait a minute, there are emotions and expressions that are innate. And when they found the tribes in the Amazon that had never been exposed to Western newspapers or anything, a lot of the cultural anthropologists and researchers and psychologists wanted to do some evaluations and testing to understand. And he has pictures of that he couldn't speak their language. He had to have a translator, but he asked them what they were feeling when they made a certain expression. And the person might say, well, I was happy. Well, I was angry. I was thinking. Well, I was confused. And then he knew that it was real. But what he also found was that someone that was blind at birth, who never seen a caregiver, had expressions that were universal. So he identified 7. Some people before him thought there were 6. And when that Inside Out came out, which he was the expert that they used, they combined contempt and disgust. They are different, though. Contempt, as I said, is always one-sided. Disgust is even. And the one has contempt where the brow can come up and like looking down, like a hawk eye. And Paul Eckman's daughter, also a 6, and she could do all the faces. Now, she grew up with her dad, and so that would be natural. But as I mentioned, the 6 is the most identified with what they want to conceal, but does not realize that they need to be a 4 to have emotions. And the other thing is that we have many, many actors that are 6s. Leads, they might have different tritypes, but we like them. They're funny, they're affable. And until they learn mind over matter, they're amazing. And when they learn mind over matter, they feel more confident. So it works out both ways. So Now, when I was working with Alicio and many others, as I've taught classes, I always give Amelia Clark as an example of a 6. Now, she played kind of a fierce 6 as the mother of dragons, but you can just search YouTube for Amelia Clark expressions, and she can move every part of her face separate. Now, I can't even do this side. I got to do it with my finger, or to make my brows do this and go up and down all at the same time, like she's doing. I have to hold it there. I can raise my right eyebrow like this, but I can't do all the independent movement. And so if you watch this in real time, which we couldn't put on here, but you can go watch it, it's just such a perfect example, because she can look sad, she can look like questioning, or she can look like she's looking down on someone. But when you see every face, then it explains a lot. And surprise is when the eyes, both brows are up, like, what? No, really? Are you sure? And it's just this movement that you really have to see on a lot of faces. But in real time, it's memorable. And clients would come to me and say, Katherine, you have to help me. People say that I'm not a good team player, that I'm disapproving. And I'm not. I'm just thinking about how hard it's going to be for me to do a new project, a new way. And then, of course, the boss was often a 7 who wanted everyone to be all excited. And the 6 would be thinking about what could go wrong. So I had to teach their manager that 6s are meant to think of every possibility. And doesn't mean they don't like what the boss is unrolling, but they're just trying to consider how it's going to impact them and if they're going to be able to do it. And then that solves a whole lot. But I teach the mind over matter so that they don't have people unfairly judging them. But it's a double bind for a 6, because the defense strategy says don't inform people about the ways in which you feel vulnerable, and don't disclose who you are until you meet someone else who's going to say they're scared too. And because then 6s open up. Like if it's a big meeting and 6s had to attend, they didn't come with anybody, and they're kind of anxious, and then they're supposed to group and they don't know where to group. One 6 under their breath usually will say, oh, I hate things like this. I never know what group to go to, but they voice it out loud. And then another 6 will say, you know, I don't either. Let's be in the same group. Now, they're often the extroverted 6, but having said that, still they voice it because it feels better to say it